I'm Sarah de Lagarde, and I'm 80% human and 20% bionic. I am a prosthetic wearer. I have a prosthetic leg, but I also have an AI-powered bionic arm. Now, you might be wondering how I got myself into the situation looking like a Bond villain. Well, like any self-respecting Bond villain, I have an origin story. You see, I wasn't born this way. I spent 44 years of my life able-bodied until disaster struck and rendered me permanently disabled overnight. My origin story starts in August 2022. My husband and I fulfilled a dream 10 years in the making. We submitted Mount Kilimanjaro. At just shy of 6,000 meters in altitude, it is the highest freestanding mountain in the world, and we climbed it in 8 days. On the last day, we departed base camp at midnight. It was cold, it was dark. It was so cold that the water in our water bags froze, but we soldiered on. And with every step, the air got thinner. There's only 50% of oxygen at the top of Kilimanjaro. Altitude sickness is the main reason why people can't get to it. But after 7 hours, we managed. We got to the top just in time to see the sun rise above a duvet of clouds, bathing this barren, moon-like landscape in a golden glow. And I was elated. I felt strong. I felt invincible. I felt like nothing bad could happen to me now. How wrong I was. Because just 1 month later, I was back in London, and I was on my commute home from work. I took the London Underground, and I fell in between the gap, in between the stationary train and the platform. My fall went unnoticed, and the train departed. 22 tons of steel crushed my right arm above the elbow. By some miracle, I remained conscious. I was trying to draw attention to myself. I cried out. Nobody heard me. Nobody saw me lying across the tracks. And I thought things couldn't get any worse. But then they did, because the second train came into the station. And this one crushed my right leg below the knee. I now know what it feels like when you're about to die. It's like having a big block of ice lodged inside your chest, and the coldness is spreading. And there was a moment where I wanted to lean into the darkness, where I wanted to give up. But then I saw the faces of my 2 daughters pop up in my mind's eye, and I could hear their voices so clearly. "Mummy, what are you doing? Please come home to us. We need you." And in that moment, I decided I was going to survive. I resumed my cries for help. "Somebody, please help me. My name is Sarah, and I don't want to die." Over and over again, until somebody heard me, help came, I was rescued. But isn't life cruel like that? 1 minute, you're on top of the world, and the next, you hit rock bottom. In my case, quite literally. It marked the start of a very long and painful rehabilitation process. I needed to learn how to walk again. I needed to learn to use my non-dominant hand. I needed to overcome post-traumatic stress syndrome. But above all, I needed to familiarize myself with a world I had so very little knowledge of, the world of amputees, which I associated with Paralympians or war veterans, perhaps even pirates with wooden legs and a hook for a hand. I hadn't quite realized how far innovation had come in this space. So meet my bionic arm. It is custom-made, state-of-the-art, manufactured by different companies in different countries. The bionic hand is built in the UK by a company called Covey. The articulated elbow steeper in the US. The custom-made socket, Ottobock, in Germany. And that's just the hardware side of things. It is the software that is really interesting because it uses artificial intelligence. Now, just to clarify, I do not have a microchip implanted in my brain, not yet anyways, but I use myoelectric technology. And the way it works is that I have to think about a movement in my head and twitch the remaining muscles in my residual limb in a very specific sequence that equates a specific gesture. Now, where does artificial intelligence come into this? So, inside this custom-made socket, I'm wearing a willow wood silicon liner that has several electrodes embedded within that sit on the surface of my skin and pick up slight movements, translates them into electric impulses that then run through the elbow and instruct the hand. The artificial intelligence helps me complete those moves. Every time I use the arm, data gets collected onto an external NetApp server. A machine learning algorithm sifts through the data and starts recognizing patterns. And once enough data has been collected, the algorithm switches over to become generative AI. The arm starts predicting what my next move is going to be. In the beginning, a year and a half ago, when I started using the arm, it was using up a lot of brain power. It was very tiring for me to use, and there was a 10-second delay between thought and execution. Now today, that has become a lot easier for me. I can multitask, talk to you, and move the hand at the same time, but also that delay is gone. I often get asked if there is anything that the bionic arm can do that is superior to my biological arm. And to be fair, our bodies are amazing, and our hands in particular are very complex and therefore difficult to replicate. However, there is one distinct feature that the bionic arm has that is superior, and that is that of strength. I have an app on my phone that allows me to toggle through different grip patterns, but it also allows me to choose the strength of my grip, a soft touch to pick up a fresh egg without crushing its shell, but also I can intensify the grip to a point where crushing a can of soda is totally doable. Now, of course, I had to put that to the test, and when I met the boxer, the professional boxer, Anthony Joshua, at a black tie event, I naturally challenged him to a bionic handshake. Now, as you can see from his facial expression here, I don't think he quite expected the grip to be that strong. But it got me thinking about the companies that produce these limb replacements and how they also produce medical assistive devices that augment the human capability, such as exoskeletons. And I was thinking about the way that we use glasses to enhance our vision, where we use hearing aids to improve our hearing, and how, in that context, it is not that far-fetched to think that we would use these medical assistive devices to enhance our performance, our endurance, our strength, and our dexterity. That night of my incident, I joined a club nobody wants to be part of. The club of amputees, 60 million worldwide. Sounds like a lot, but actually it only represents 0.76% of the world's population. Now, sadly, that number is growing, and not just because of geopolitical tensions and wars, but because of the rise of diseases like cancer, diabetes, other cardiovascular diseases, sepsis. So the number of amputees growing, the demand for mobility devices is growing with it. I'm an advocate for societies to future-proof themselves to become more accessible. However, I sometimes get met with skepticism, saying, well, what's the return on investment for us catering to such a small part of the population, 0.76%? But then I thought about it, and I thought, at any given time, there's an excess of 1 billion people living with a physical disability, which represents 15% of the world's population. And if that's not enough, there's something that we all have in common, you and I and everyone. 100% of us is going to age. And with age comes a decrease in mobility and an increased need for healthcare, for medical assistive devices. We are an aging population, and that's particularly relevant in North America, Western Europe, most parts of Asia, and Japan in particular. By 2050, we will double the number of people aged 60 and plus to 2 billion, which then represents 22% of the world's population. So I do believe that there is a real imperative for us to focus on our future, focus on future-proofing our environment. That accessibility, I'm going to need it, but you're going to need it too. I talk about accessibility in a different sense as well. Affordability. See, this bionic arm is a marvel of technology, but it doesn't come cheap. £250,000. Not many people can afford that. As a matter of fact, I can only afford this because of the generosity of the individuals who've so kindly donated to my fundraiser. But I hope that in the future we can bring that cost down. I'm very hopeful for the future though, because I think that there are many innovations that will happen. At the moment, my battery life is of 8 hours. I would love to see that increase. The weight is currently standing at 3.5 kilograms. I hope that over time we'll find a way to make it lighter. I hope that over time we will also perfect haptic feedback so that I can feel texture, that my bionic hand can start feeling if something is cold or hot. I also hope that we will perfect the art of osseointegration, that we can seamlessly combine bionic limbs to biological interfaces, the same way as we think about dental implants. Over time, I think it will be safe to implant that computer chip inside my brain, connected to my central nervous system, and perfect the communication between my brain and the bionic limb. And if we really want to get futuristic, I urge you to think about this. If we invest in more research in bioelectricity, stem cell research, what if we unlock limb regeneration and we could regrow a damaged organ, that we could regrow a lost limb, just like a lizard can regrow its tail when it's lost. I really believe that when you invest in healthcare and innovation, you invest in people. Hundreds and hundreds of people have invested in me. The nurses, the doctors, the physio, the prosthetists, the bionic providers, my colleagues, my friends, my family. And what happens when you are given the support medically and financially? Great things happen. And I went back to Kilimanjaro, this time with my husband and my 2 daughters. And I tried to summit the mountain again. And what do you think happened? On the 14th of August 2024, I became the first woman in the world to have climbed Mount Kilimanjaro twice in 2 years. Once able-bodied and once disabled with 2 prosthetics.